Of course these people have influence, and they want to talk about how to expand their power, and we should object to the way powerful and rich people manipulate the world economy to their benefit. I have no problem with that. But how am I so sure? These same allegations were made in the late 1790s against the Illuminati, then the Freemasons, then the Jesuits, then the Jewish bankers in the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, from Russia, an apocalyptic conspiracy theory about Jewish bankers. Then it was the Rockefellers. Then it was the Council on Foreign Relations. And a lot of these people who make a big deal about the Bilderbergers really have this closet agenda of trying to suggest to you it's the Jewish bankers like the Rothschilds. And if you're talking about the folks from the American Free Press, that's their agenda. That's an organization that was founded by one of the biggest anti-Semitic, neo-fascist conspiracy theorists in the world, Willy Claes. So yes, I've investigated both sides of this question, and I'm quite sure of what I'm saying.
Good to have you on the programme tonight. Chip Burley, investigative journalist. Thanks for being on RT.
Now, that was Chip Burley, who works for a group called the Political Research Associates, which is funded, if you go to SourceWatch and check out who bankrolls this organisation that pays his way, by, you guessed it, the Ford Foundation. Now, the Ford Foundation, as we'll explain after the break, is expert in bankrolling these attacks on so-called conspiracy theories, and will analyse the propaganda that you just heard after this break. It's the Alex Jones Show, with me, Paul Joseph Watson, sitting in for Alex for this final segment. And you just heard an interview with Chip Burley on Russia Today. Now, Chip Burley is somebody who makes a career out of, quote, debunking conspiracy theories. He works for a group called the Political Research Associates, who, just by coincidence, are funded by the Ford Foundation, which is an attack dog which transnational elitists use on a regular basis to demonize any criticism of their agenda for a global government as extremist and anti-Semitic, which is a little bit rich given the history of Henry Ford and the Ford Foundation, with funding the Nazi war machine and Hitler giving awards to Henry Ford. And now the Ford Foundation is attacking people like Alex Jones and Prison Planet for saying that the Bilderberg Group has any power over world events as an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. A little bit rich there from Chip Burley. But he said in the Russia Today interview that anyone who believes Bilderberg has any influence over world affairs is working towards a new world order is, quote, a lot of malarkey and a hoax carried out by people who believe in an elaborate fairy tale about how power is executed in the world. Well, I'm afraid Mr. Chip Burley and also Ian Hollingshead of the London Telegraph, who authored an article a couple of days ago basically dismissing any notion that Bilderberg has power. Those two individuals are going to have to get out a very big plate, put their words on it and start eating, because the big breaking Bilderberg news today is going to go up on Prison Planet in the next break, and its former NATO Secretary-General admits Bilderberg sets global policy. And this is Willy Claes, two-time Bilderberg attendee, who told a Belgian radio station that each Bilderberg member gives a 10-minute presentation, after which a report of that presentation is formalised by Bilderberg organisers, and then Bilderberg members in each individual country are mandated to implement that policy, that consensus on a global scale. So the fact that Bilderberg does set policy at its annual secret meetings has now been admitted by no less than an actual Bilderberg member. Now, in the clip you just heard, Burley contradicts himself several times, but he basically tries to make out that Bilderberg members take what they've heard from Bilderberg, then go back to their host countries, and even if they raise the issues that were discussed at Bilderberg, quote, more powerful people then tell them to go and shove it. And that's a direct quote from Chip Bolet. Now, that's quite interesting because the Prime Minister of Spain, his Secretary-General, and the Queen of Spain attended this past weekend's meeting in Sitges, just outside Barcelona. So if, according to Chip Bolet, that, you know, more powerful people than the Prime Minister and the Queen of Spain tell them to shove what they heard at Bilderberg, then Bolet is attempting to weave a bigger conspiracy theory than he dismisses us for supposedly concocting and claiming that Bilderberg has power. Now, of course, in reality, Bolet knows that the most powerful people in the world do attend Bilderberg, and that it is at Bilderberg where that consensus for how global events are going to unfold over the next 12 months is agreed upon. And that's now being admitted by former NATO Secretary-General Willy Claes, a two-time Bilderberg attendee. Now, merely on the face of it, the claim that Bilderberg does not have an influence on policy is patently ridiculous. I make the comparison of if you had 200 MLB officials attending a secret meeting for 4 days in America, would this have an impact on the future of baseball if 200 Major League Baseball officials attended a secret meeting and talked about baseball? I wonder. But that's essentially what Bolet and Ian Hollingshead of the London Telegraph are trying to convince us of, that top CEOs like Bill Gates of Microsoft and Eric Schmidt of Google, top bankers like Marcus Agius of Barclays and Peter Sutherland of Goldman Sachs don't meet with national presidents, prime ministers, big newspaper owners, members of the European Parliament, and members of the US government to talk about anything important. That they just get together for 4 days to talk about tiddlywinks, which is, on the face of it, completely absurd. And we'll continue to explore this after the break on The Alex Jones Show. This is Paul Joseph Watson sitting in for Alex Jones while he works on his upcoming documentary film. Now, before the break, we were talking about the debunkers who have been out in force over the past few days, trying to portray Bilderberg as this group of irrelevant old men that have no influence over global policy. And we played a clip from Russia Today with the Ford Foundation operative Chip Bolet saying that anyone who claims Bilderberg has any power over modern contemporary events believes in a fairy tale and is also probably a closet racist. Now, this completely contradicts the latest news that's going to go up on prisonplanet.com shortly with this top NATO Secretary-General and two-time Bilderberg attendee Willy Claes, former Minister for Belgium, who said that indeed Bilderberg do set global policy, that each member gives a speech for 10 minutes, a report of that speech is compiled, and then each Bilderberg member is mandated to enact those policies in terms of war, the environment, oil prices, global government in their own host countries. Now, people like Bolet and Ian Hollingshead of The Telegraph use bluff and slimy semantics to imply that just because no treaties or laws are signed and sealed at Bilderberg, that the group itself has no power. But the fact that Bilderberg does set the agenda, sets the global consensus from a whole gamut of policy areas, as I said, from oil to the environment to the economy, is not only being confirmed by Willy Claes, as I just mentioned, but in March of last year, no less than Etienne Davignon, the chairman of the Bilderberg Group, said in an interview with the EU Observer. Now, in a separate interview, he told the BBC that we have no power over global events, we don't set policy. But he was caught out in an interview with the EU Observer in which he said that the Bilderberg Group, quote, helped create the euro in the 1990s. Now, we know that the foundation for the EU and ultimately the euro single currency were initially laid out by Bilderberg in the mid-50s, and WikiLeaks got the documents, and these were also acquired by the BBC from the 1955 meeting, the Bilderberg meeting, which took place in West Germany, in which Bilderberg members talk about the agenda for a European common market and a single European currency. Now, bear in mind that the euro itself was not even discussed by the European Union until 1992 with the Maastricht Treaty. So debunkers could claim that, you know, the idea of a continental European system of trade was floating around in the mid-50s, which it was. But to claim that the Bilderberg group, simply by means of it being a contemporary political idea,